Everyone, we'll be starting in a minute, just waiting for a few more people to join in. Stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to Gupshup's webinar on building conversational bots with a new scripting tool. My name is Sohan and as always I have Shreyans with me. And so today we'll be taking you a little through our new IDE and our new scripting tool. For those of you all who are in the loop, you would have known that Gupshup just launched a new IDE bot, a new version. And it's pretty exciting because we have a lot of new features that not too many other tools on the market right now have. Just a little bit about the agenda. I'll talk a little bit about conversation and how messaging is big and how it is integral to the whole bot ecosystem. A little bit about the types of bots, a little bit about what NLP is, talk a little bit about NLP on the fly API, and then we'll go on to the Gupshup IDE and scripting tool, and then a little bit about how you can actually build conversations, followed by a demo. Just to clarify, we have actually covered a lot of this in our earlier webinars. So the demo will form the main chunk of this webinar, and Shreyans is going to take us through that. So before everything, conversation, right? It is the sort of backbone behind what all bots work. The great thing is, with the whole apps and websites that we're used to, interacting with, it kind of forced humans to think like computers, right? Humans never really thought in terms of radio buttons or drop-down menus. With chatbots, the great thing is forcing computers to think like humans. It's complete. Most of it is conversational based. It lies within messaging apps. So you're really forcing and you're really shifting the paradigm. And the great thing about this is you're bringing it to a whole new bunch of people who might not have been able to access it earlier. For instance, and also now we know that conversation is the new user interface. There are a whole lot of articles about how script writers are the new UX designers. Earlier on an app or a website, you would have a designer who would draw a mock-up or draw like a wireframe of like an app or a website, but now you actually have people who are designing dialogue and designing scripts. If you want an input from a user or you want to show output to a user, you're doing it via dialogue. So conversation really forms the basis of this, and keeping that in mind, we really built out our new scripting tool. A little bit about the sort of types of bots. This is just one sort of way of classifying bots. You have like sort of structured bots where you have buttons and menus and carousels within the messaging app itself. It is still slightly conversational, but you're giving users maybe you're presenting them with options that they can actually either click or interact with. The example that you see here is a customer service bot that uses a sort of wizard to try and figure out what's wrong with the internet connection. You have sort of unstructured bots that are largely conversation based, where it's almost free chat with the bot itself. The sort of bot that kind of we're seeing working and really clicking with audiences right now is a hybrid between the two. And later on in the demo, we'll show you how you can actually build one of these sort of bots. A little bit about natural language processing before that. So natural language processing, or NLP for short, is a way for computers to analyze, understand, and derive meaning from human language. As you know, computers can't really understand or comprehend human conversation generally, right? So there has to be a sort of way for human conversation to be converted to structured data that a machine could understand. How it does this is via two things, which is, of course, I'm simplifying it a lot, but via intents and entities. Right? So what is an intent and what is an entity? So essentially, intent is a mapping between what a user says and what action should be taken by a software. So if you look at the example given below, the user is asking the bot what the weather is in London. So the intent here is to find the weather. Right? So similarly, if a user says, I want to book flight tickets, the intent is to book flight tickets. Entities are essentially concepts that are specific to a domain as a way of mapping natural language phrases to canonical phrases that capture their meaning. In this case, the entity where the weather query is needed is London. The query can change to what is the weather in, say, Bangalore, or what is the weather in New York. The intent here remains the same. It is still a weather query, whereas the entity, in which case it's a city, changes. There can be multiple entities in a particular statement as well. So in this example, the user says, help me find a Chinese restaurant in Mumbai. So the intent is pretty clear. It is a restaurant search, right? But there are two variables, if you can call it that, or entities in this particular statement. One is the city that you want to find the restaurant in, which is Mumbai, and the type of cuisine, in which case it is Chinese. A different example of the same intent could be, help me find a Thai restaurant in, I don't know, Stockholm, right? So the city is Stockholm, the cuisine is Thai, but the intent still remains the same. Again, we're talking about this a little bit because we will show a demo of how you can actually build a bot, using natural language processing that figures out intents and entities using a scripting tool, and how it's made so easy. So there are a ton of NLP tools available online, right? The most popular of them are Wit.ai, API.ai. Microsoft has their own called Lewis, IBM's Watson. There are a few customers like Rasa as well. And all these do a very good job, and they have like their certain pros and cons. Gupshup, we have developed our own NLP API as well, and we call it NLP on the fly. And it's an NLP API that we have developed specifically keeping bots in mind, chat bots and voice bots, whatever. The great thing is there's no real need to train a model here, right? So if you've used things like API.ai or Wit.ai, you know that you'll have to train a particular model for it to start working well, right? And maybe after training it for about 20-30 queries, you can find that it really works well. With the Gupshup API, there's no real need to train the model, hence it's called NLP on the fly. You can specify different variations, and it also includes entity extraction. The sort of cases that the NLP on the fly API works really well is when you have you don't have an extremely large set of intents, right? Like say if you have like maybe 3,000 intents, something like this might not necessarily work the best. But if you have, but most chatbots, 99% of the chatbots that we see don't really have that many intents, and we found that the NLP on the fly API works very well. This is the API. Of course, it's all there on our website, so I won't get into too much detail. But essentially, this is how the JSON looks. So as you can see here, this is what the user says, which is I want to travel to San Francisco, right? And the other intents that have been defined by the person making the bot is at the bottom here. So as you can see, it finds the variation of the different intent and also extracts the entity, right? And the great thing is you don't have to worry too much about this, since it's so tightly integrated into our scripting tool, that you can code all of this using just normal English script, right? So essentially, I spoke a little bit about our new ID bot builder. New ID bot builder is a pretty revolutionary tool. These are just some of the features. It's cloud-based, so you don't have to install anything. It's completely in the cloud, so you can access your bot, new bot code from anywhere. It's built on Node.js. It's built on the infrastructures on Amazon AWS, so you really don't have to worry about scalability or reliability. The UI is completely customizable. Maybe you're used to using Xcode or Eclipse perhaps, so you can actually customize the look and feel as per those IDs. It has multi-file support. If you've used our previous ID, you would know that that supported only single file, but we've actually improved it and now have multi-file support. It also comes with Git integration and a chat widget for testing, so you can test your chatbot right in the ID itself. You can also use commonly used NPM modules, so you can import stuff like either PubNub or Require or whatever sort of node modules you want to install. And it also comes with like a terminal and logging, so you can actually debug your code right there. The biggest sort of addition, of course, is the scripting tool, which also has auto NLP, which Shreyans will be showing you very soon. The scripting tool, just to repeat, has things like intent matching, entity extraction. We have also made it really easy for you to build out structured messages or make API calls, which kind of form the sort of backbone of most bots used nowadays. Most bots also need like small talk components, especially questions like, hi, who are you? Can you tell me a joke? Can you help me out? Things like this. We find that a lot of users actually ask bots these questions, so we've actually built out a component and made it very simple to add these small talk components for you. The one thing that a lot of people find difficult in building out conversations is state and context management, right? So for a bot to remember the previous state, or maybe like say n number of states, prior, is actually very difficult to do manually. So we've actually built that into our bot scripting tool. So we kind of take away all the pain, from in developing, the conversational parts of a bot. And we allow developers to kind of focus on building the bot logic and building the conversational bits, because that forms the basis of most bots. There are many more things you can actually do, things like slot filling, disambiguation, and add like libraries and stuff like that. But for the purpose of this webinar and demo, we'll just take you through the list that I've shown right here. Just before that, like a small deviation, but I'm just a couple of tips on actually building out conversations. We've actually seen a lot of developers have like really good tech but not build out the conversational bits of their bots really well. A couple of small tips. It's always good to introduce the bot and set that expectation at the very beginning. It establishes like a sort of context with the user to say, hey, I'm a bot, this is what I do, you can ask me about so and so, I'm still learning, things like that. I think that helps set the expectation of the user. The user doesn't really think that they can ask pretty much anything off the bot, but only stick to the domain that the bot is an expert at. Always give easy access to a help menu. Like if the user says help me, or I need help, or maybe the user is stuck somewhere, make sure you provide easy access to a help menu. Even if there's an intent that your bot doesn't really recognize, maybe you can say, sorry, I didn't understand that, but here's something I'm good at, or here's something that you can ask. One thing that we again find that a lot of users don't do is to lead the conversation. One thing that you absolutely shouldn't do is keep things very open-ended. Like your first statement shouldn't be, hi, what can I help you with? You have to remember it's a new paradigm, so users aren't really used to chatting with chatbots as yet. And sometimes keeping things very open-ended means that the user doesn't really know what to do. A better sort of approach would be to really lead the conversation. So really draw those flow charts and draw those decision trees beforehand before you start coding your bot. And we find that this really helps, create a really engaging sort of experience. And lastly, embrace structured messages. It is still conversational at the end of the day. Again, like I said, users still aren't very comfortable with this phenomenon just yet, but they soon will be. But structured messages is a good way to sort of bridge that gap and still provide a very conversational and very clean sort of interface for your user. So these are a few tips you can actually use on building out a really good conversational bot. We'll go to the demo, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Shreyans, who will take us through a very interesting demo. I'm just going to make him the presenter right here. Yeah, so over to you, Shreyans.
Thanks, Sohan. And hey, everyone. Yeah, so as Sohan mentioned, we'll be looking at our new IDE, and then we'll also look at what features that brings to the table. Along with that, we'll see how you can use the scripting tool with our IDE and create a bot with NLP capability into it. So let's get started. So we'll just go to Gupshup.io, and first thing you're not able to see my screen. Just hold on a moment. Okay, all right. I think there were some technical issues as well. So yeah, we'll go to Gupshup.io. You can log in using GitHub or Facebook. I'm already logged in here, and we'll go to my bot section. So as you all might have already attended our previous webinars, and you know that we offer the complete bot lifecycle where you can create bot, you can then deploy it on AWS, and then you can publish them on different messaging channels that we support, including our web widget, etc. And you have access to data, logs, config, and everything, right? Including monitoring and analytics. So I'll not get into much details on other features, but let's get straight into creating a new bot. So let's say bot script demo, and we'll select the code your bot option. Yeah, our bot is created, and we'll click on that. So once you click on that, you will actually be prompted with this message that would you want to navigate away to the new developer ID, or would you like to continue? So we'll select yes, because if we select no, we will be redirecting to the older ID. Let's select yes. So once you select yes, you'll be redirected to the new IDE. So this is the new IDE. That's how it looks like. Now this has lots of features built into it. First of all, it is a URL which contains your dev ID and everything on our platform. So let me explain you different sections which it has. So this section, the Explorer section, is actually where it will show you, your the complete file which is actually present. Just hold on a second. I think I had a bot already named bot script demo, and it is picking up the older versions of it. Yeah, just I'm really sorry, but we'll actually create a bot with a different name. Let me quickly do that. So even if you delete your bot from the dashboard, the dev ID actually retains the code of your previous bot which you might have created. And if you create a bot with a similar name, it actually picks that file. So it's my bad. Yeah, now this is how it should look like. So Explorer section has a couple of things like this is where it shows that if the server is running or not. You have a search option where you can search for file or something in your project and everything. This is where you can, so again, search file and everything, and you can log this section. This section shows the current project. So our current project is bots script demo. Then under this section, you have bots where you can actually add files, or you can go ahead and delete the already existing bots from here. So even if you delete it from the dashboard, the files is not deleted from your dev ID, so you can go ahead and delete them from here. And then there's this section where you have bot logs, which will show you logs for the bot which you will run. It has a terminal which you can utilize, to for adding npm and all those stuff. It also have an outline which shows all the functions in your code. Then you have a chat widget which actually shows which is used for testing. There's also this section where you have like git QA projects settings, like account settings, where you can change the theme of the editor. You can choose beautify and all those stuff, so which you can do. The other functionalities are like you can right click on this, you can add new file, you can add a new folder to the project, you can upload files to it. You can now, these are the deployment process. So deploy on prod will deploy this on the AWS in production. Test on channel will deploy it locally, but you can go ahead and test it on Facebook Messenger or any messaging channel. Start server, if you start the server, you can actually test it out locally on the chat widget, which I just showed. Then you have the package manager, which is for npm module import. And then you have node debugger, which works like any other debugger. If you want to debug what's wrong with your bot, you can actually enable click on the node debugger and set breakpoints and debug your bot. And everything else is what we just talked about. So now there are two most important file of this project. One is the default.scr, which you look, and one is the index.scr. Sorry, JS. Now index.js contains all the handlers which we require, which are actually as required by our platform, like message handler, event handler, then script handler, HTTP response handler, and other handlers, right? So message handler basically is receives all the message from a user for a bot, and event handler is triggered when there's some event, like when on Facebook Messenger someone clicks on get started button. Event handler receives that information, and apart from that, any message to the bot is sent to message handler. Now script handler here actually is to call the bot script tool, which Sohan just talked about, and bot scripting tool then calls the default.scr for whatever you have coded inside this, right? So for now, basically the bot scripting is defined by two important concept. One is bot state and one is user state. So bot state is something the bot wants to send to the user. User state is something which the user sends to the bot. So bot state is always highlighted in the green, and user state has no color. Now these are labels here which you can define, which can be utilized. I'll show you how to define one state, and will be utilized if you're making API call and everything. We'll look at that later. So now you have a default code. Let's quickly, where you are actually sending a message along with some more message, and then you have to intent here. So user state, user query is always defined as intent. So you have intents like inquire and transact, and then you have a bot response for this. So I'm going to just stop this server which is already running here and restart the server by start server, and we'll test this default code direct in the chat widget, and then we'll remove this code and code a kind of a travel bot from scratch and see different functionality of the bot scripting tool. So it says please wait, the chat widget is reloading. And if you look at that, the chat widget reloaded and the message is welcome to bots world. Hi, would you like to inquire or transact? That's what we have actually sent it here. And if I click on inquire, it will trigger the inquire intent and say processing your inquiry. I can also say I want to inquire, and it will still pick up that. So this is how the bot scripting works. You can just define intents. You can even add questions over there, and then add the answers at the as the bot state for it. So what I'm going to do is actually remove this completely, and we'll build everything from scratch. Now all of this, whatever I'm going to talk, is actually documented here under bot scripting. It has everything which Sohan just talked about. So you can read through all these documentation and understand more, because I'll be going a little fast here to honor the time of the webinar. Yeah, okay. So the first and foremost state which you will be writing is the bot state. So let's say, hi, I am a travel bot. How can I help? So this is the message which we are trying to send it to the user as the first message. Now let's say now we will be expecting 3 things from the user. Like he can do a flight search, he can do a hotel search, he can do a car rental or something. That's what we are going to build. So let me just add those intents. So we'll add like flight search as an intent, and we'll also define the response back for this flight search. Now note here that indentation is really important. If your indentation is not right, you will not be seeing the color combination correctly. So if your indentation is right, then you will see that bot state is always in green and user state has no color. So let's say let's just for now just say sure, searching flights. Let's define another intent like hotel search and say sure, searching for hotels, and then let's say rent cars and say sure, what type. So for now let's just say what type, and we are going to save this, and we'll look at once we have saved this, we are going to restart the server. So we'll test out how this pans out. So if you look at on my right side, you'll see all the notification like server started, reloading the chat widget and everything. Now once the chat widget reloads, you will see that the first message the user receives is, hi, I'm a travel bot, how can I help, right? So now I can go ahead and say I want to book a flight. Okay, now it says no keyword found, I want to book a flight, right? But if you look at the logs here, it actually matches the input, like I want to book a flight, with the flight search here with an intent score of 0.11. So that means that our NLP is actually trying to match it and gave it an intent score of 0.11, but the default intent score that the scripting tool accepts is 0.2. Now, as more number of users starts using this bot scripting and we continue improving our NLP framework, this number will definitely increase. But for now, this is what it is. So, and if since there is no intent match, I mean the threshold is really low here. So the the default message like no keyword found was sent. So what we'll do is we'll actually add a default message and as well as decrease the threshold to 0.1, because then we'll see that whatever we entered there would be accepted. So first let me just go ahead and NLP threshold. Let me just lower the threshold to sorry 0.1. We'll see this, and let's just say 0.1, and we'll also enable the options.default message, and we'll say, maybe I'll say I am still learning, right? So this will be the default message if none of the intents are mapped, or you get a threshold lower than 0.1. So I'm just going to do that and save both the file, and let me restart stop the server. It auto restarts, but it takes like some seconds to auto restart, so I'm just quickly going through stopping and restarting. So how can I help? Let me just say need air tickets. Now this would map to sure searching flight, because if you look at this, NLP actually mapped it like with a max intent score of 0.2, and it did this. So I can go ahead and ask, I can even say I want hotel. I want the hotel. So it says searching for hotels, and where you can see that the NLP response has mapped it to that intent with an intent score. So that's how it works. Now, if I go ahead and say, if I go and say need accommodation, it says I'm still learning because it couldn't match with any score to the right intent, and it actually mapped to rent car with 0.06, which is negligible. So if you run into this, then you need to add variations, as Shohan mentioned. That is one of the feature of the scripting tool. So I can go ahead and add this part as a variation to the intent hotel search. We can say search accommodation. Now let me just save this and run this. So this will be useful if you want to, if there's something our NLP engine is not able to identify, you can add those as variations, and then that would be enough for you to actually get a valid result. So now I can also do, how can I help? I need accommodation, and it will map it to the intent hotel searching and respond back with okay, searching for hotels. Right, so that is how you can actually add variations to it. Right, now we also talked about structured messages. So we are asking user, when user says rent cars, we are asking for sure what type. So we can actually create buttons right here. So I'm going to just do this to create some buttons, like what type of car do you need, like SUV, sedan, or maybe right. So Now once I do this, it will actually create the quick reply right then and there. Let me just apply this quickly. So let's say rent cars. So if you look at this, sure what type, SUV, sedan, hatchback, and I can click on SUV, sedan, but I haven't coded for those three states. So if I have to, then it will be like response from user would be SUV, or like okay, booking SU S. Oh, I'm sorry, I wrote SVU, should be SUV. My bad. SUV. Then since there are three buttons, there has to be three states for it. So you can go ahead and code okay, booking sedan and hatchback. Okay, okay, booking hatchback. So these are the three states you'll have to define for all these buttons once you do this. So this is how you can actually go ahead and create the structured messages. Plus, if you want something more than this, just these quick replies button, you can obviously go ahead and look at Facebook structured messages and use any of those JSONs right inside the quick reply. Like if you want to use the button template, you can actually use this, add it as a complete line in this, and it will work as it is, right? Okay, so moving on, let's look at entity extraction. Before that, Sohan also talked about small talks, right, before entity extractions. So there's a specific module which you have to define for common small talks, which is called common. So we'll talk about state management and common small talk here a little bit. So for example, let's say hi, and for hi, hello there, and then maybe I'll add one more small talk where user may say who are you, let's say who are you, yeah, who are you, and I am a bot. Now these are small talks which user can ask anywhere between at any state at any point of time. So now Sohan said that the state and context are really important for the bot to manage. Now anything written in any module other than common, the state is auto managed by the scripting tool. For example, if the user says rent cars and the state currently is car for the intent car rental, and then again user says who are you, it goes to common, but the state for the user in the bot scripting tool is still rent car, because common has no state, common is stateless. So that's why all the FAQs and everything you define it in the common section. So let me quickly run this to show you what do I mean by this. Let me just quickly start the server. So this works as something as a decision tree. Like you have, if you think about this as the main node, and then you have three nodes like flight, search, hotel, and rentals cars, and then rent car has like three nodes, sedan, hatchback. So you can always you always search down the tree, right? So that's how this also works. Now if I say rent cars, it will be sure what type. Now for me, my state is right now at this point. So if I click SUV, it will say okay, booking SUV. I can go ahead and say sedan or something, but if I say like flight search, it will actually not understand that, and it will throw the default message like still learning. Why? Because user state is right now at this state. So it will only search inside those three nodes of the intent rent car. So that's how the state is managed by the the bot scripting. Now if I go ahead and say hi, it will respond back. If I go ahead and say, okay, there's something broken here. Let me just see what. Let me restart this. I think I missed it. Maybe the file was not saved. So I'm going to test it. Okay, so if I say rent car, it'll open this. Now if I click on SUV, it will say okay, booking SUV. Now if you remember, I previously said flight search and it gave me an error because it couldn't find anything at the state, at the intent state, rent cars, because it has only SUV, sedan and hatchback to map to. But if I go ahead and say, who are you? It is going to respond back, I am a bot, because as I mentioned, common is stateless. So even if someone make a small talk when the user is at certain state, it will actually go ahead and respond with that. And if I go ahead and say sedan, and then it will say okay, booking sedan. But if I go ahead and say flight search, it will not, it will say I'm still learning, because and it is still at the rent state. The state is managed at the rent cars, and it will only look for the intent at these 3 states. Now there's an option to actually handle this. So this is like an exception which is happening where the intent mapping couldn't be completed. So you have an option, you have a derivative called defx, which you can add for auto exception handling. So I'm going to add this defx at the beginning of my module, where the first I want the search of intent to happen. If there is a error, I want the search to happen from the first intent of this script which we have written. So once you add this defx, it does what it does is, if there is an exception, like if the intents are not mapped at certain state, it will go back to the start of the decision tree and then start searching for those intent. And if still it doesn't find, then it will throw the default message. So if I have to stop the server, I'm going to restart this just to be sure. So let's say rent cars. For now, I'm just doing this. Now if I say SUV, so it says booking SUV. Now if I say flight search, then it will actually say okay, searching for flights. Sure, searching flights. What happened here is, it actually tried searching for flight search intent under this state, and once it didn't find it, it went to the top of the decision tree and start searching for it. So that's how you can actually use defx to auto handle the intent mapping exceptions. All right, moving on. Now we will see how you can actually do entity extractions, which is again which happens on the fly. So we have this flight search. Now instead of searching flights, let's say sure, let's say where to. This is going to be the response of the bot, and I'm expecting user to give the location. So let's say to, and this is how we do entity extraction. So I have to give a variable name. For now I'm going to give location, and then I have to define what type of entity needs to be extracted and an example of it. So I'm just giving London as example, so that the bot scripting understands that I'm looking for something of a location. So London is just an example for the for the scripting tool to understand what type of entity has to be extracted. So here let's searching for flight to. Now what we did is we are going to print the location which user entered to show that the entity extraction works. So let me just save this and let me quickly restart the server. Now let's say tickets. Let's say sure where to. Let's set to Paris. Okay, searching for flights to Paris. Now, if you look at what happened is, if you look at the NLP response here, so the input was to Paris and it mapped to the intent to London, and since it had to extract location as the entity, it extracted that. So it used the London as an example for the entity that we are looking for, and it extracted that. I can also go ahead. So now what we'll do is we'll actually ask user when he wants to fly and make an API call to get the date for it. So that will cover how you can make API call into this scripting tool. So searching for flight. Okay, let's modify this. When do you want to fly to this location, right? And whatever user is going to enter, that I'm going to actually do the post processing on it. So I'm going to label this response itself saying date search. So what this will do is, if you add a label to it, it actually understands that you are looking for something just more than this, sending this response, and it actually looks for a function of this sort into the JS file. So we'll go ahead and create a new file called default.js, where we will actually write all the JavaScript functions and dynamic for sending dynamic responses through the scripting tool. So if I do dates, so I'm going to define a function first, function date search, and this so this is, I'll just open the making API call section. Now I'll just define, you need 4 parameters here. So the first parameter options, I just call this as main event and main context. You can look at the documentation and understand the complete syntax, and I'll call that. So now we have an API. This API, which if you give 2 days from now, or if you give something, it gives the date to it. So I will use this API here. Now you can use the request module of Node to make an API call, or you can also use our own functions for making HTTP call. So we have 2 functions for making a get and a post call. So we'll use this we'll use the simple HTTP make post to make this API call. So first of all, let me define the URL quickly. URL would be this, and then since there is an header, so it's header, and header would be a JSON. So context type, we have to send the context type along with this. So context type would be not this though, it would be this. just copy this from here. We have application. And the body would be body equals body is sentence, and sentence equals main event dot message, right? So this, and then we have the URL, we have the header, we have the body, and then we will just make the STP call. So main context dot simple HTTP dot make post, and URL body, URL body header, and I'm going to define it callback function. Callback function to function parse to parse the date. So in this, I'll just do now. The response will be sent to this, and let's define context event, and it will be under event dot get response. So let's say var date equals JSON dot parse event dot get response. Okay, I think it's already getting late, so I have the code ready with me. I'm just going to copy paste the other parts of it. So next state callback function and this. Okay. So you have to define a next state where the date has to go. So, and also the data. So first of all, since here we have date search, so we will define two empty states, user states, valid date, and then here we'll just say result as okay, searching for slides on and date. This is the variable we have defined. We'll also do invalid date. These are two empty states we have defined here. Let me see this, and let's go back here. We have validate here. Now date I have passed. I also need something to hold the data, right? So in the index.js, under the script handler, I'll just do options dot data and create this as an empty array to hold data into it. So here what I'm going to do is options dot data dot date equals date. So let's just delete. To be on the safe side, let's just call this a date. Okay, validate. Here it should be main event and main context. We have callback, and this module dot export date search. The function has to be mapped to the label that we have defined. So this is date search, and this is date search. So yeah, right. So once we are done with this, let me just save this and quickly stop the server and start the server. So till the time this is starting, what we have done is what will happen is, since the scripting tools will see that there is a label to it, it will actually send this response back to the user, and it will, when the user responds back, it will actually look for this function for this label in the JS file, and it will run that function. Since we have defined some empty state, so it will and in the script we also have defined which is the next state the bot script tool should execute. So it will execute this state, and the response to it is, okay, searching for flight on date this. So search for it. So here, let's say book flight. Sorry. Let's say to Hong Kong. Sure, when you want to fly to Hong Kong, let's say 3 days from now. Okay, I ran into an exception here. Valid date is not present. Okay, my bad. So this has to be valid date because that's what we defined in the here. It's defined here. So my bad with this. Okay, stop. Where to do this? Let's say so today in it is 5th of October, so it is going to search flights on 2 days from now would be 7th of October. So it gives you the date. So this is how you can make API call and get the result in the back to the script, and that's how you can send dynamic data. Now we talked about intent mapping, we talked about adding variations, we talked about structured messages, we talked about entity extraction, API call, we also talked about state management. Now let's see, we also talked about exception handling. Now let's see how you can send random responses. Now someone if says who are you, you might want to not just send I am a bot, but you would maybe say I am a chatbot powered by Gupshup. Maybe this, or you want to say I don't know, just some random responses, right? So if I say this server, so what this will do is it will actually pick one of the responses from this and send back to the user. So that is completely random. So this is how you can add random responses. So we'll just see how this works. So let's say who are you? And I'm a chatbot powered by Gupshup. Let's try again. Who are you? I'm a bot. So it actually randomizes the responses, and you can add this to even here where where would you want to fly, or what date would you want to fly on, something like that. So that would actually be make for a user it won't be monotonous, and he can get random responses from the bot. We'll also quickly look at how you can send multiple messages. Now hi, I'm a travel bot, how can I help? If you want to send maybe I'm a travel bot and another message along with this. So this is how you can do it. So there's a directive for it called continue. So you add this continue, and so let's say suppose here I'll have to just push everything by one indentation. As I mentioned earlier, indentation is it. So you just have to indent everything to how it was, right? So continue, how can I help? Instead of this, I'll just say I can help you with flight, hotel, and car bookings, something like that. and we'll leave the defects. So let me just save this. Stop server. Quickly start the server. Now, if you look at this, it sends two different messages like, hi, I'm a travel bot. I can help you with flight, hotel, and car bookings. So this is how you can actually send multiple messages. You can actually keep on adding continue to this and send multiple messages with this. Another thing is you can actually call any of these modules from for any of the intent match. So let me show you that as well. So let's let's say if someone says hi, instead of saying hello there, I want to call this main module with where I'll send hi, I'm a travel bot and everything this. So what you can do is you'll just add this function call and default since that's the name of the file dot main. That's it. So I missed the T. Okay. So once the file is saved, and if we, I think, so, and start the server again. So if I say hi, it will go back and send me these because that's the bot message defined in the main section. So you can instead of writing everything in one default main module section, you can add multiple section like star, like help module where you can add some help text like I can book flight, hotels, and cars, something like this as a help, and you can actually do is instead of that just say help. So I say hi. That's it, done. So this is how you can actually create different sections to it. So I think now we'll just quickly look at how you can test this before even actually deploying it on production. So test on channel is a good option for that. It quickly deploys it on staging and gives you the command to test this bot on the Gupshup proxy bot. Now Gupshup proxy bot, I'll just say proxy and bot map successfully. And it says, hi, I'm a travel bot, how can I help? And if I just say hi, it will actually, hi, I can book flight, hotel, and cars, which it is running the help module here. So we actually created a different section and called this. And I can go ahead and say, need flight tickets. Sure, where to? I want to go to, let's say, what should we say? Say Mumbai. Mumbai is sitting. Okay, it's still running. I don't know what happened. So maybe to some other city. Let's say to. Sure, when Tokyo, it took Tokyo here, and let's say tomorrow. So okay, searching for flights on 6th of October. So this is how you can test. Now just to deploy this complete thing, you can deploy it on prod. They are pretty so it says starting deployment process, creating zip and all those. So there are many more things which you can do with the scripting. These are the basic ones which is required for each and every bot you build. We'll add those documentation as well here, and you can look at all the other documentation to understand. all the other functionalities of the scripting tool. So I think this one is deployed here. It says successfully deployed, and you can test using the real name. Now I can go ahead, even on the dashboard. Let me just refresh this dashboard. I'll just copy this name. See this? So this now actually is up and running in production. So if you look at bot scripting demo 123, the status has changed from development to deployed. And then you can go ahead and publish this bot to any of the messaging channel that you can go ahead and publish this to anything: Facebook, Slack, Twitter, Telegram, Microsoft Teams, and even the web widget, etc. Yeah, and you can look at logs and everything else as well. So I think with that, I'll end up the IDE demo and hand it over to Sohan. Correct? Sohan, over to you.
Thanks, Shreyans, for that very comprehensive demo, and I'm sure all of you are very well versed now in creating your own bot. We're almost out of time, but I'll quickly go through some of the questions. Bhavani has asked, what is this programming language and what language is this? So, well, Bhavani, it is, like I said, built on Node.js. To write code, you need to write it in JavaScript. The scripting tools are on writing languages, so you'll have to read our documentation to kind of figure it out. But most of it is in simply English script, so there's not too much. Dasu asks what kind of analytics are available. So Dasu, there are a lot of analytics. Everything from messages, users, details, and all of that. We also have integrations with Dashboard. So if you want like maybe something a little more in depth, a little more custom, you can do the Dashboard integration to get analytics. Okay, Madhu has asked how we can mix conversation and structured messages within the code, and where are the structured message handlers. Hi Madhu, nice to hear from you again. I think Shreyans just showed a pretty comprehensive demo of how he mixed conversation and structured messages and how it was handled. For instance, when you click SUV, you can run certain code on the SUV or hatchback or sedan. I think that's pretty simple to do using the new IDE. So I'm just going to do that. Okay, any other questions? And I think this is probably the last question, but Vince asks, first says awesome improvements, and he asks if is there a way to link a set of backend database fields to the bot structured message? Have you done anything like this? Yeah. So Vince, to answer your question, yes, there is. Essentially, Shreyan just showed you how easy it is to make an API call. So if you have like an external database, it's simple to make that call sort of pass the JSON response and push it to a carousel. Similar to how the buttons was created in the scripting tool, you can also create structured messages. So that's also pretty simple to use. We still have the functionality of using our old format to create like a structured message. In this case, a carousel as well. So that also is pretty easy to do. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Glenn asks, is it case sensitive? I'm assuming he's talking about the bot scripting tool. In which case, no, since there's natural language processing that's added, the case really shouldn't matter. And also Mukund asks, what is the underlying NLP engine that you use? Good question, Mukund. So it's built on the Stanford NLP engine, but we've built we've written a lot of code above that, again, to kind of make it more customizable for the whole bot now. Okay, and since we're out of time, I think that's all the time we have for questions. Once again, thank you so much for staying with us for so long. We do a lot of these webinars. We do one a week, so just stay tuned to gupshup.io/webinars or look at our Twitter feed as well. If you have any doubts or you just want to have a chat or have some idea about chatbots, write to us at develop@gupshup.io, and we'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much from Shreyans and myself. Thanks again, and have a good day. Cheers. Good night.